Did you hear about the news of our most favorite villain?
No, I have been head down in GDC madness for the last week. What's the news?
FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried?
Oh, he's going to sentencing this week, right?
No, he's got sentenced 25 years. He's going to jail for 25 years.
How do you feel about that?
Fucking good. It seems like kind of a slap on the wrist, but no, it's fine. That'll just give us our money back.
I mean, he's vegan, so I got to support my people. I can't be that bad of a guy, right? We just lost half of our podcast listener base.
All right, and that's it. That's the only Web3 talk for the entire rest of the episode. Let's just jump right in. What's going on, as usual?
Yeah, lots of news. GDC beat me up, and my voice is barely existing, so...
A few of us who have our voices will be at MAU next week. So if you're interested in speaking to the Upptic team, hit us up, marketing@upptic.com. We'd love to see you in Vegas.
Awesome. So we have 3 pretty juicy stories this week. This kind of came out of nowhere, which is Sensor Tower, the mobile analytics company, acquired Data.ai, the company formerly known as Apptopia. This surprised a lot of us in the space because at least the public perception was that Data.ai was the larger of these companies, and there'd been no kind of public hints of this. Everyone I've talked to, most of my circles, everyone was like, wait, what? Sensor Tower bought Data.ai? Why shouldn't it be the other way around?
Right, exactly.
Today we announced a historic event, the Sensor Tower story. So we acquired mobile marketing firm Data.ai, formerly known as Apptopia. The acquisition represents a significant advancement for Sensor Tower, expanding our customer base, mobile marketing, and app intelligence products, and our presence across the globe. We'll link the announcement. You should check it out. But this was shocking. So Data.ai and Sensor Tower had 2 very similar products, the 2 market leaders. I think at least public perception was that Sensor Tower had been increasing their market share, but not to this amount. There's not a lot of info floating around on this other than the press release itself. And I want to be clear, like in disclosure, Upptic is a Sensor Tower customer. We like the product. We like the team. We have no vested interest otherwise in Sensor Tower. There does seem to be information out that this was largely led by private equity to fund the deal. Some news that didn't circulate as much from mobilegamer.biz about 2 days later. So the press release, we're going to link this, not to make fun of them, but Sensor Tower had a really weird announcement video that looked like they shot it in 1996 with like a $50 budget. That added to kind of the strangeness of this whole thing. So watch the video. It's kind of strange and interesting. One thing though, on a sadder note, 2 days after the announcement, it looks like over half the staff of Data.ai was laid off. So we've seen different numbers floating around. Mobilegamer.biz reported around 200 people were estimated to leave. Other sources have said 60% or more of the staff would have been laid off, which does make sense. I'm assuming there's a lot of redundancies because there were such similar products.
Right.
This is really interesting because it creates close to a monopoly in the space. A while back, we had the CEO of Apptopia on. Apptopia is another competitor product in the space. I believe they have a much smaller market share.
That's my understanding.
Probably a big moment for Apptopia, though, because now they stand alone as maybe the only other meaningful solution. But yeah, there's a lot of scuttlebutt about this deal in the space right now. Xander, what are your thoughts on this deal? Why did it happen the way it did? Your thoughts on private equity's involvement? And what do you think this means for the near term of mobile app analytics?
Yeah.
Lots of questions.
Lots of questions. While most of the reporting on mobile gamer biz is uncorroborated, I heard very, very similar things talking to folks in the space. Basically, the merger was announced very quickly. Customers of Data.ai received an email sort of out of the blue just saying, hey, there's new management. I heard there was up to a 60% reduction in force from inside sources, uncorroborated. So yeah, it came as a shock to me specifically. I thought Data.ai was a much larger company. That was sort of the public perception. But strategically, this makes a lot of sense. I mean, Sensor Tower, younger company than Apptopia, really, really ascendant, have done a great job growing market share, expanding their product suite.
Good reputation too.
Very good.
Like Apptopia has had a couple of sores on their reputation in the space throughout the years.
Well, and historically they've been very, very costly. And Sensor Tower, while not cheap, is considered a cheaper alternative with a comparable product. So, we've been using them for several years. It really makes sense. And if you're selling data, which is what they're doing, to consolidate the data sources, right? And so this strategically makes a ton of sense. The private equity component is interesting, right? And so where my head immediately jumped to is like, why this? Why now? And I don't have a clear answer to that. But we've consolidated down to one clear and dominant market leader, right? And so this is very good for them, very good for the data source, very good for the aggregators of the data. But what's going to happen is we're going to see prices increase on Sensor Tower. There's like basically no world where we don't see prices go up, is my guess. And I think the point that you made earlier is it just gives Apptopia advantage or a potential
a lane
to potentially compete on pricing, which I think is feasible. But then one other thing I had thought about recently, which is completely sort of like rampant conspiracy theory land. Beyond people like you and I, one of the primary customers for this are big hedge funds and private equity folks who do like trading on apps and ad networks. And so I wonder how much of this is a play from some folks in that space to sort of consolidate all the data sets into one place. I don't know how these licensing deals are going to work out, but just consolidating all the data into the hands of a few people who are going to be able to really leverage it in a meaningful way. So no particular insight in there, but it's just interesting that the role of private equity in this entire situation as it's played out.
Yeah, the timing of it's definitely interesting. It's interesting you mentioned price to Sensor Tower. Please don't increase our renewals next year. Yeah. But I think that was how Sensor Tower got so much of their market share, at least from my perception. Companies I was at and friends, we would get quotes from App Annie when that was the branding, and from Sensor Tower. And App Annie was extremely aggressive with their pricing. They were used as the example to me of the stare at your shoes pricing model, which is when you're selling to a customer, see how expensive their shoes look like, and quote the price based on that. App Annie was the company that I was introduced to that concept from, and someone giving me that analogy. And Sensor Tower is known for, I think, being a lot more reasonable. Point being, it's going to be interesting to see, since Sensor Tower conquered so much of the market by having, I think, a more compelling value proposition. Now that they're closer to monopoly, will their ethos change? If not, if they keep that ethos, I think it's really hard to compete with them. If they do take a more monopolistic approach, I'd keep bringing up Apptopia, but then that creates more of a lane for Apptopia to do what Sensor Tower did to App Annie. Yeah. And it's also probably a time for new competitors to emerge, because a lot of this data is readily available through available APIs. So it's going to be really interesting. There's probably some opportunities for new competition in the space as well.
Yeah. One interesting thing is, my understanding is most of the data AI senior leadership team is there. My guess is people who came up with the data AI pricing strategy are part of the senior leadership team. And so it wouldn't surprise me if I would be flabbergasted if prices didn't go up over time.
I understand that the CEO of data.ai, quote unquote, moved on.
Okay.
Does that line up with what you've heard, Xander?
My understanding was that many of the data AI senior leadership were still there. I was in the article that you linked, but...
Yeah, I haven't seen this in any official documentation. That's just what I've heard through the grapevine. So if you are still there, App Annie CEO, apologies, but we did hear that he's moved on.
But the one other thing to just say, and to harp on this, like the power of the data set now is just immense, right? And so like they're the clear market dominator in this sense. And so it's like, I think it's be very, very difficult for anyone to compete compellingly.